There's an expression, the elephant in the room. And this refers to something that is so obvious, so startling, so obviously true that we can't understand why people can't see this elephant. And here I have to go to a man named Peter Stoner, who was a mathematician. He died in the 80s. I think he was 92 years old. And he wrote a very important mathematical uh, uh, Peter Stoner wrote a very important mathematical treatise. He was out there in California, in Santa Barbara, uh, Barbara, California, and he was a mathematician and a scientist. He wrote this book, Science Speaks, Scientific Proof of the Accuracy of Prophecy and the Bible. And in order for me to explain what he accomplished, I want to talk just for a minute about the Manhattan Project, because my physics teacher was in on that. He had a small part to play. But the Manhattan Project's success wasn't a matter of random chance. Uh, and therefore, it's not exactly the same as what I'm going to get at, but I want to use it as an example. You had the world's top physicists, you had Oppenheimer and these other guys, you had unlimited funding, $2 billion, equivalent to 30 billion today. You had scientific knowledge of nuclear fission. You had a deliberate human intention and effort, and you had 4 years of focused work. So it is not really so breathtakingly hard to believe that they could actually test successfully an atomic bomb in New Mexico in July 1945. This is called deterministic probability. Uh, there were so many thousands of deliberate human choices and efforts going into this. It wasn't a random chance kind of thing at all. But with biblical prophecy, you have a different kind of probability. It's fundamentally different. How could one person randomly fulfill all these specific conditions by pure chance? What is the probability? Uh, Here we're talking about things that you cannot control. You can't control where you're born. You can't control when you're born. You can't control your ancestry. You can't control the circumstances of your death. You can't control how other people react to you. You can't control the timing of historical events. So, what is the probability that one person could fulfill 300 prophecies? Uh, these prophecies that he chose, I'm talking about Peter Stoner, the professor emeritus of science at Westmont College, who died in the 80s at 92 years of age. The prophecies that he chose were clearly stated in advance. In other words, they were in the Septuagint. It could be shown when they were written. You can't say they're after the fact or vague predictions. They are verifiable historically, and they're beyond human control. These are the kinds of things that he chose. And for each prophecy, he estimated the probability conservatively. In other words, born in Bethlehem, Micah 5:2. That's a probability of 1 in 300,000. Where do you get 300,000? At that time, there were roughly 300,000 inhabited places where one could be born. So to be born there in that specific, tiny, insignificant village, that's 1 in 300,000. And by the way, we know from a local, Justin Martyr, who points out the cave, etc., that this was a verified prophecy. This man was martyred in Rome, but he knew that territory at that early time. And just like we know where Grant's tomb is in New York, or we know where Abraham Lincoln was born, so he knew. Preceded by a messenger. This is in Malachi. The probability is 1 in 1,000. Most significant figures don't have someone preparing to wait for them, heralding them in advance. They don't have their own prophet prophesying their coming. Entering Jerusalem on a donkey, Zechariah 9:9, probability 1 in 100. Kings typically rode horses. Donkeys were quite unusual for triumphal entries. Betrayed by a friend, probability 1 in 1,000. Reasoning, most people aren't betrayed by close associates. And Psalm 41, verse 9 would be that prophecy. Betrayal price, 30 pieces of silver. Zechariah 11:12, probability 1 in 1,000. Reasoning, specific amount in a specific currency. Then you have this manner of death, a specific form of execution with a specific company, Isaiah 53:12. Now, when you take these prophecies and you do the mathematics, you get something like an unbelievable figure, something like 1 in 10 with 157 zeros after it. This is a figure that's so large you can't even get your mind around it, really. Let's talk about flipping a coin. How many consecutive heads would you need to flip to reach odds of 1 in 10 to the 157th power? That is 157 zeros after it. You would need to flip heads 522 times in a row without a single tails. So if you're a coin flipper and you've got a quarter and you got George Washington on one end, that's the head, and then on the other hand you have the tail. Each coin flip has a 1 in 2 probability. For consecutive flips, it's impossible. If you flipped a coin once per second, 24 hours a day, it would take you only 8.7 minutes to flip 522 times, but to actually get 522 heads in a row by random chance, you need to keep trying. And every person on the earth, there's 8 billion people. If every one of them flipped coins continually, one flip per second, for the entire 13.8 billion year history of the universe, the probability that even one person would achieve 522 consecutive heads in a row is still essentially zero, impossible. So I'm trying to give you an illustration to show you what a breathtaking, monumental elephant in the room we're talking about with the Bible. and Peter Stoner deliberately used conservative estimates. For instance, the probability of being born in Bethlehem could reasonably be much lower than 1 in 300,000 when you consider the specific historical timing, the Roman census, the family traveling from Nazareth, etc. The actual probabilities are likely far smaller. But still, even with conservative mathematical figures and using prophecies that exist in the Septuagint, translated 250 years before Moshiach, so they are indefatigable prophecies. You can't say they're happenings after the fact. You have multiple non-believer sources, Josephus, Tacitus, Pliny, confirming these things. You have disciples who had no motive to die for a known lie, and all but Johanan were martyred. And you have the accounts, including embarrassing details that wouldn't be invented, like Peter's denial, the disciples fleeing, women as the first witnesses in a culture where women's testimony wasn't valued. You have all this stuff. So this is a monumental elephant in the room. And this is the colossal elephant, the greatest, most colossal elephant in human history. You don't have any book like this. If you want to try to hold up the Quran or any other book and say, well, look, we have this great book, it doesn't have anything like this, where you have a collection of texts that span 1,500 years, written by approximately 40 authors, 3 continents, where God himself is speaking. And he's showing that he's speaking through hundreds of specific prophecies. And he's also saying that the eternal destiny of every person hinges on the message. And so the claims should not be dismissed, ignored, or treated as mere cultural artifact. And yet they are. The Bible is ignored. In spite of the audacity of the claims of the Bible, that it is God breathed, that it is the only way to God. And there are 300 specific prophecies about the Messiah. The mathematical probability of one person fulfilling just 8 of these prophecies by chance is 1 in 10 to the 17th power, meaning 10 with 17 zeros following it, 100 quadrillion. So that's 8 prophecies. For 48 prophecies, you have to put 157 zeros after the 10 and say 1 in that number. Because you see, these are predictions made centuries in advance. The precise location of his birth, the manner of his death before that kind of execution was even invented, where you see it very clearly. They pierced my hands and my feet. People try to get around that by saying, well, it's just a coincidence that very Hebrew text is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're going to twist that scripture. We're not going to allow that one in. You have the betrayal price of 30 pieces of silver, Zechariah 11:12, countless other details that are fulfilled. And even though it's the most attacked, banned, burned book, try to get a Bible in North Korea, for instance. You'll be summarily executed if you're even caught with one. In spite of all that, the Bible has survived with unprecedented manuscript evidence. We have over 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts, some dating within decades of the original writing. We don't have any other ancient document close to this level of textual verification. We actually know that this is the New Testament. We have it verified textually. If I write something down and then I die and I'm buried, and you say, well, how do we know this guy actually wrote this? Well, what if it was copied 5,800 times and all the copies said essentially the same thing? Wouldn't you sort of get the idea after a while that this is probably what he actually wrote? Also, think of this. The Bible has transformative power. Think of what a catalyst it was for the abolition of slavery. Think of all the hospitals, all the universities, all the advancement of human rights, all the transformation of billions of individual lives, how the Western civilization was shaped. I'm talking about the legal system, the art, the literature, the moral framework. Think of the transformative power of the Bible. And then get this, the monumental blindness. Even though this massive elephant stands in the room, it's unacknowledged. People will spend years studying philosophy, science, literature, religion, and there that elephant is. They don't even look up and see it. They don't even compute the mathematical difference between this colossal elephant and these tiny little mouse writings that they're looking at. They're looking at little mouse writings while this massive elephant is in the room and is totally ignored. And this is an ironic thing. The irony is profound. Why? Let me ask you, why in the world would I, growing up in a home where I was basically mandated by my parent, especially my mother, to go to the house of God, not once, not twice, but 3 times a week from my earliest childhood until I was 18 years old and left home and went to the university? how could I, with excuse me, with all that exposure, still not even notice the elephant in the room? And it wasn't until I was 28 years old that I bothered to actually buy a Bible, before I actually deigned to maybe open it and try to read a little bit of it. How could a person be that blind? How could I possibly be that blind? And yet I was. It took a miracle. I had to basically explore everything else. And finally, after every other door was locked, opened the one door that was left, which was the Bible. I didn't come to the Bible first. I came to it last. It was almost like, okay, there does seem to be a large mammal in the room here. Maybe I've ignored it for 28 years. Maybe it's time not to ignore it. And be ever hearing but never understanding, be ever seeing but never perceiving. That's the way I was. And it says the gospel is veiled, but it's veiled to those who are perishing. And it says judgment. For judgment, I've come into this world so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. Well, I was blind, and by the mercy of God, I was able to see. I was blind to the presence of the gigantic, colossal elephant in the room. And by the mercy of God, the spirit of stupor, the eyes that could not see and the ears that could not hear, was taken away, because I did not have the Holy Spirit. I didn't accept the things that come from the Spirit of God. These things were foolishness to me. My eyes were blinded. My heart was hardened. And my understanding was darkened. And I was separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that was in me due to the hardening of my heart. And I was blind. And the people around me that I influenced, I was leading the blind. And we were all falling into a pit. I thought I was rich. I'd acquired wealth, and I didn't need anything. And I didn't realize that I was wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. And this elephant that stands in plain sight actually predicts this blindness as well, that people would have the truth before them and yet not see it. And this spiritual blindness would keep humanity from acknowledging what has been there all along. And for 28 years, I was that person. And these probabilities never dawned on me. I didn't get it. I hadn't opened the Bible to examine these things, and I hadn't thought about it from the point of view of probabilities. And as I said before, the atomic bomb probability cannot be calculated beforehand because it involves intelligent design working toward a goal, whereas biblical prophecy probability can be calculated because it assumes random chance and demonstrates that random chance is utterly impossible as an explanation. The elephant in the room isn't just large, it's cosmically, mathematically, impossibly large. It's larger than you can even imagine. It's larger than over 500 flips of the coin that all come up heads in a row. And all the people on earth from the beginning of the earth trying to flip those coins like that, and it cannot be done because it's mathematically impossible. Consider all the beaches, all the deserts, all the ocean floors on earth. Consider the total grains of sand on earth. Even if you had to find one specific grain of sand among all the sand on the earth, your odds would only be 1 in 10, followed by 18 zeros, which is much, much uh, more probable than what we're talking about. 1 in 10 with 157 zeros after it. That's what Moshiach ben David did by fulfilling all those 300 prophecies. Think about the typing monkey illustration, the famous illustration about monkeys typing Shakespeare. A monkey randomly types on a keyboard with 26 letters, ignoring spaces, punctuation, and capitals for simplicity. To type a short sentence, Moshiach is Yeshua, 17 letters, no spaces. Probability of typing this randomly is 1 in 10 with 24 zeros after it. To reach 1 in 10 with 157,000, I'm sorry, 1 in 10 with 157 zeros following the 10, the monkey would need to randomly type a specific sequence of approximately 110 letters perfectly on the first try. And for, this typing Shakespeare, randomly producing Shakespeare, or let me give you another illustration. Consider the typical lottery odds. The odds of winning the lottery, approximately 1 in 292 million. This is why the Powerball people are suckers. To reach the Powerball jackpot 19 times in a row, buying only one ticket each time. If you played Powerball twice per week, this is really a very bad and I would say wicked illustration. But if you played Powerball twice per week, 208 draws per year, and somehow won every single time for 19 consecutive wins, it would take you about 2 months to have your 19 wins. But the probability of this actually happening is 1 in 10, followed by 157,000 or 157 zeros. So if every person on earth, 8 billion people, bought one Powerball ticket for every drawing twice per week for the entire 13.8 billion year age of the universe, if that's what you want to come up with, the odds that any single person would win 19 consecutive jackpots is still effectively zero. It is impossible. Or consider the human genome, the DNA sequence. approximately 3 billion base pairs, 4 possible nucleotides, A, T, G, C, at each position. Random DNA sequence. The probability of randomly generating a specific sequence of 260 base pairs is, again, 1 in 10, followed by 157 zeros. So, fulfilling 48 messianic prophecies by chance is like randomly typing out a specific pre-selected DNA sequence of 260 base pairs. Getting every nucleotide correct on the first try. Except that in the case of Moshiach ben David, he had to, as you say, quote unquote, randomly fulfill over 300 specific prophecies, not just 48. Do you understand that what he did was impossible? Look, if I was thrown out of my house and immediately checked into a free room with only 23 cents, and after that, a free room for 3 years that I did not have to pay for, what are the odds of that? Take 10 followed by 157,000 people. Kick them all out of their houses. And then see how many of them actually have 3 years of free rooms, starting in a motel. How many would get 1,000 free rooms? We're talking about 3 years, 300, roughly 300 and some odd days in the year. So let's make it 1,000 free rooms. If you took 10 to the 157,000 par, if you took one person out of that many, would even one be kicked out of his house and then have first a free room in a motel, which is impossible, and then 1,000 free rooms for the next 3 years? How many would get that? Would even one get that? Yes, one did, me. That's why when I went into the homeless shelter for 20 years, I pulled out the business card and showed them the business card of the Wishing Well Motel. And I said, you think it's a miracle that you're here in this homeless shelter? I hope you do, because it is, especially to hear the gospel, which you're doing right now. But look at me. Look what happened to me. What are the odds that that would happen? If you think that it's a random kind of thing that anybody could do, no problem, you go down to Florida. You go to Southern Florida on Labor Day weekend, and you try to get into a motel with 2 dimes and 3 pennies in your pocket. And then, right after that, try to get the same kind of accommodations free of charge for 1,000 nights for 3 solid years. Try to get that. See if you can do it. See how many people in the universe could do that. Well, I did it. Why did I do it? Because the Lord was with me. And what happened with Yeshua ben David? The Lord was with him. That's how he did it. Now, are you going to ignore the elephant in the room and go on with your life and hope against hope and play the odds? This would be like going down to the lottery guy and buying a lottery ticket. And if you don't win the Powerball, then he has the right to throw you into a pit of fire. And that's what you're doing with your soul. You're gambling with your soul that you won't go to hell against these odds. Like someone gambling that he will win the Powerball lottery by one purchase. And if he doesn't, he will be thrown into the lake of fire. That's the kind of loser odds that you're playing. That's the kind of dice that you're throwing over your own soul. And Lord, I want to pray that somebody will wake up, that they will get it, that somebody will go and buy a Bible. Sure, you can buy Peter Stoner's book and read it and see how a mathematician, professor emeritus of science, how he worked out these probabilities. You could do that. Or you can just take my word for it that I didn't make it up, and you can just start reading the Bible and find out. I knew a Greek man. He stayed up all night, night after night, smoking one cigarette after another, reading the Bible. He was certain that his soul was in peril, and he wasn't going to have rest until he read every word. That's the kind of attention to the elephant in the room that is needed here to come to salvation. And oh God, I'm going to pray that somebody will come to salvation tonight. And have mercy on me, a sinner, Lord. Forgive me that it took me 28 years to see the elephant in the room. And I didn't do it out of the goodness of my heart. I came to this elephant fighting and scratching, and I almost had to be have my every rug pulled out from underneath me before I would even deign to look up and start to see the elephant, because I was a hard-hearted, lost person under demonic and degenerate family curses and family degeneration, and my eyes were hardened and closed and shut. I had 28 years where I had deliberately ignored all this stuff and hadn't even deigned to look into it. I had an idol in my heart. But God, in his mercy, opened my eyes. And I'm praying, Lord, that you will open someone's eyes to pay attention to what has been said in this message. And taste and see that the Lord is good, and come to a saving knowledge of Moshiach ben David. Moshiach ben David, come into my heart, forgive my sins, take me to Hashem, to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. And oh God, I will give you all the praise, and I will thank you for covering me with your precious Kapora and washing my sins away and giving me a new heart, a new mind, and new eyes to see and new ears to hear, and a new understanding of the elephant in the room. And we'll give you all the praise. And everybody said, Amen.